Good afternoon. I'm Rob Kelly, County Judge, and today I'm supposed to, on our budget calendar, I am announcing and presenting my recommended budget for Kerr County for FY 24-25. Before we start that, I want to clear up a misunderstanding that was in the newspaper this past weekend regarding our budget process this year. The information that was used was not for FY 24-25. It goes back to last year, FY 23-24. And there was an increase of $11 million in our budget at that time because we had to actually book the ARPA funds and book the funds that we received from the sale of the bonds to build the animal shelter. And that's what caused that, and that was last year. That is not this year's budget. This year's budget, those are not the numbers. I've already talked to people at the Daily Times, and they'll print the corrections tomorrow. If you have any questions, we have all the information to document what those numbers really are. And with that, let me move on to the FY 24-25 recommended budget. Let me review a little bit about the process. We changed it around a little bit this year. The first thing we do when we start the budget process is just sit down and review the current budget. And then we provide access to that budget to the various department heads and elected officials so that we can get their input. And what they do is go through and figure what they need for their budget for this year. Each one of these departments and offices form a vital function for the county. And as a result, the budgets don't change that much from year to year. Frequently on the smaller departments or offices, there's actually no change. But we start with the current, we get input from them, and then we have workshops where they come and explain to us their request. If they're asking for more money, why? If they're asking for new hires, why? And we did that process back in June, if you'll recall. And then the way that the budget process is working this year, as on the calendar, on July the 15th, I'm supposed to submit the county judge's recommendation because the county judge is the budget officer of the county, and I'm required by Constitution to do this. Following the budget that I'm going to go over with you here in just a minute, there will be 3 other workshops, 2 on the 22nd, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. The morning is actually public input, the one in the afternoon is technically a workshop. And then there will be another one on July the 29th, which is a regular Commissioners Court meeting, at which time we hopefully will finalize this, quote, proposed budget. Now let me start with some terms so that nobody gets confused. If you look at the budget calendar, it says over on August the 8th, you'll see well, I'm supposed to file. As the Chief Budget Officer of the county, it is my duty to file the proposed budget. It is not final at that time. Hopefully it is in the final form, but it is not a final budget. That is what is called the proposed budget. It is filed with the county clerk's office and it's available, will be publicly published in the paper, and that really begins a lot of public input. With that, let me first of all, hopefully quell the suspense. The budget that I am proposing is a no new revenue budget, which means that the same amount of revenues that were paid into the county last year is what we're going to try to keep our budget within that amount. And the idea is to have a no new revenue tax rate. Let me point out that this is just the budget. The tax rate part of this is actually handled in August. There's a lot of work in August, and then I think it's September the 9th is when the tax rate is actually adopted. And so for those of you that want to provide input on tax rates, you'll have an opportunity to do that later in this process in some of our meetings in August. So with that, because the statute, and I have this book up here so that you know we got to comply with these rules. Now the good news is that only half of this book applies to counties, the other half applies to municipalities. But we do have to comply with that. And what I have over here is this large notebook. And what it is, it's an itemized request from the various offices and departments for what they want for their budget. And it's all tabbed and for easy reference, but it is not the proposed budget. It is the ask. What I'm giving you right now is the first proposed budget. And I call it recommended budget because the proposed budget is actually adopted by the full court. All 5 people will decide that. So this is the book of asks. You can see it's somewhat daunting, and it has columns for what is current amounts, what the requested amount, and when I finish this presentation today, the auditor's office will go back and create new documents that now have a third column in it, which is for what my recommendation is. And then the court will make the final decision. That's what we'll do later this month. So with that, let's talk about a micro and macro approach to budget. Obviously, this is a micro approach. We've got every department, every dollar, everything that's current, recommended, is accounted for that way. And then we have, we'll hold this piece of paper up, spreadsheet. And it's 1 page. It's got a lot of numbers on it. It doesn't have near as many items going down the page as there are tabs in this book, if you'll notice. And what this is technically my recommended budget. But what it represents is the summary of what's in this book with my recommendations. And so, and when you look at this, it's much more of a macro approach. You have to really, is it up there?
Yes, sir.
Good. So let's start with a macro approach. I call it, let's get in the jet plane and go up about 30,000 feet and look down and see what it looks like from up there. It looks about like this, okay? And if you'll notice, down the left-hand side of that page, it has the fund names, and there's a whole column. It starts off with general fund, and then you'll see we go to road and bridge fund, and you skip on down, it's got, sheriff's office grants funds, and you see the numbers to the right of that are the funds that the auditor's office uses to account for those revenues and expenses. Fund 10 is the general fund. And if you follow the general fund all the way across the page to the far right-hand side, the second to last column, you'll see estimated ending reserve balance September 30, 2025. And what that is an estimation of how much money we think we're going to have after this budget. If you want to know where we're starting, you go back to the left-hand side of the page, and you look at that number right beside Fund 10, General Fund 10, $19,159,000 plus. That is the estimated reserve as of September 30 this year. That's our reserve. That's the money that the county has in reserve in case we need it for emergency. The state guideline, the Texas Association of County guideline for counties, is to always try to have at least 3 months money in the bank as your reserve. That's 25%. And if you look at this macro vision of this thing, look down to the very bottom on the right-hand side, and you'll see that there's a number in the next to last column, and then in the last column, there's a percentage, 26.84%. That is a little bit higher than the 25% guideline, which we're trying to stay within. Now, to look at this thing and try to figure out, okay, well, how much is the budget? And if you go to the, I guess it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th column from the right. And it says up at the top, total requested expenses, 2425. And you go down to the bottom of the page, right at the bottom of that column, is $64,908,729. That is my recommended budget this year. Now, and again, we're still looking down from up high, so you can kind of learn the lay of the land with this document. If you look at the column at the bottom, and it's the fourth one with numbers, it has $51,143,929. $1,404. That is the estimated revenue. And that is based upon no new revenue. So if you go up, if you look at that second column, it says estimated 24-25 property tax revenues. It's up at the top towards the left. 24.5 million. That is the amount of income that the county collects from property taxes. And it says property tax revenues. If you look at the column next to it to the right, you'll see another total for non-tax revenues. And what is non-property tax revenues? And that could be sales tax, it could be grants, it could be different forms of revenue that the county receives from other sources. And if you combine those, that comes down to the total revenue column, which is the next one over, and you follow it down, and you'll see how we come up with the total revenues we have, which is $51,143,000. It's a change. Now, I need to spend a little time talking to you about deficit budgets. I gave a talk to the Republican women a few months back trying to explain this, and they understood it when I was leaving, so I feel like I did a pretty good job of explaining it. This is my 8th budget. I sat out in the audience seats for 2 years shadowing Tom Pollard and went through 2 budget processes with him observing. I've been in office since January 1 of 2019, and this is my 6th budget that I've done, and I'm getting pretty comfortable with it. And one of the things I did to the Republican women, and Charles does not have this, I brought it, I prepared a schedule that I gave out to them that summarizes some of the important things. The tax rate when I took office in 2019 was 51.5 cents per $100 valuation. We lowered it the next year to 47.5 cents per $100 valuation. We lowered it the next year down to 45.4 cents per $100. And then 2023, we got down to the lowest, it was at 40.5 cents, 405. And last year, as I talked about some of the expenses that we had to book last year, it was raised to 43 cents per hundred. And that's where it presently sits. I'm trying to see where we go next. I'm looking at my notes. Okay, I've already talked about the no new revenue. And by the way, the tax rate, when that gets decided in September, all of that is calculated by the tax assessor collector. Bob Reeves does that for us. But another thing about that we're doing in this budget is we are obligating the balance of the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds, which is $323,000 plus. And so that's one of the things that we're doing in the budget. And the projects that we are addressing in the budget with those ARPA funds include the matching grant for the Alamo Regional Transit for transportation system that we can share with the city. It also includes the Hill Country Youth Event Center projects, the Ag Barn electrical, the Ag Barn insulation, the Ag Barn roof, are all included in that, considering obligating those funds. It also includes the fire system devices for maintenance, a timekeeping system for the treasurer, and a tech share system for the prosecutors, county attorney, and the 2 district attorneys, as well as the conversion to Microsoft Office 365 for our email system. Those are all things that are being addressed with the ARPA funds. The importance of obligating the funds is the law requires that those funds be officially obligated by the end of this year. If they're not obligated, then those funds are subject to being returned to Washington. So that's why we're trying to be very diligent in getting that done. And Noah Putman, who's sitting here in the courtroom with me, has been diligently working to get those funds obligated. Another thing that we're going to do in this budget is our capital outlay and major expenditure request. And I don't know if that is available for YouTube or not, but there are a number of projects, capital projects and major expenditures that we're going to be involved in. First of all, we've got KCSO needs 8 new vehicles. We've got, and that's over $300,000. We've got a couple hundred other $1,000 for IT software and including the Microsoft Office 365. And then some of the major ones, we've got another one for the relocation of the adult probation in order for the sheriff's office to expand over at that facility. We've got some alterations and modifications that are going to need to be done to 550 Earl Garrett. That's another $300,000. We've got case management software, Hill Country Youth Event Center projects. We've got flood control projects. Then with road and bridge, we have some of the regular projects such as guardrails and improvement of Lane Valley right-of-way, the maintenance facility, Ayler's Bridge, Bear Creek Road construction are all still in this budget, as well as continuing to fund their updated their inventory, the 10-year plan, to have another series of heavy equipment purchases. That would be part of our capital outlay. And all of those are seen, if you look over to, back to the big picture, look at that left-hand column, and about 4 or 5 entries below where the road and bridge line is, you'll see capital projects. That's where you find it on the budget. Now, with regard to the equipment purchase for road and bridge, we're looking at financing that on a tax note over a 5 to 7 year period in order for us to be able to make the monthly payments and not have to pay for the entire cost of the expensive equipment. Then that brings me to, and there's not a slide on this one, and I talked about it with HR. What this is we call it special requests. And it is really requests from department heads and elected officials for raises in their offices for their staff. And then we have what we call the step and grade system. Is it up there?
I'm not sure. Is that it?
Is it a summary of it?
That's not what I have. I have the special request to create a new position of frozen positions.
Okay.
I don't know what you're looking at. No. Yeah, what you have.
That's another one. But what
What he's
on the
talking
special
about.
request, everybody has submitted their request.
That's it.
Does everybody agree now that's up there? Okay. This is the ask. And if you turn to the second page, you'll see that they total net $153,377, and with roll-ups, all benefits, $196,713. That's what was requested by the various department heads and elected officials. What you see on that far right-hand column in the summary is I've just about cut that in half in my recommendations. And I've got a $72,487 recommendation, and with roll-ups, that's $107,000. But that's for personnel. And then with regard to new hires and these frozen positions in road and bridge. Probably the biggest struggle that I had was in what to recommend in these special requests and how do we compensate our people. Quite frankly, and I have a slide on it. I don't know if Charles has it or not. The wage adjustment and inflation slide. I want to talk about that just a minute.
That was it.
That's it?
Got it.
what this schedule shows what the rate of inflation has been per year, beginning in 2019 and going through 2023. And you can see that if you add up all those numbers for those, 6 years, 5 years? Okay. Oh, I see. The national rate of inflation cumulatively has been almost 22%. And when you look at this, you can see what the county's done to adjust wages to try to compensate people. We don't call it a COLA anymore. This is not a cost of living adjustment because we haven't kept up with the cost of living. We've fallen behind. And you can see that the difference is almost 9%. Even though we've had 5% wage adjustments the last 2 years, we're still behind. And so in working with how to approve these recommendations for these requests, quite frankly, everybody that's on this schedule is deserving of more money for the work that they're doing. One of the problems that I have is I've got 3 of our major offices, the tax office, the county clerk's office, and the district clerk's office, and they have entry-level clerks, which are grade 15, and you can either go have a step 1, 2, or 3. But I've got almost 20 of them. And when you're asking for a raise for everybody in your department, in a big department like that, it becomes very difficult to accommodate that kind of request. We've talked about it here on the court, and we have put $50,000 in the budget for a salary study to do next year because we need to do something to be able to compensate these deserving employees. And so, because we're having trouble feeding our own family, I have not included any new hires in this budget. And I know that those that requested them, I'm sure I'm going to hear from them. Probably my phone will ring as soon as I get off the bench. But I am not recommending any new hires. With regard to Road and Bridge, they voluntarily agreed to freeze some salaries last year because they didn't have any applicants for those positions. And so rather than keep them in the budget, they allowed us to take them out of the budget. They have asked that they be unfrozen, and I have agreed to do that. They're still looking to see if they can find people that can accept those open positions. Now, having said all of that, and because we haven't kept up with inflation, I have a schedule of what a wage adjustment would cost the county, from 1% all the way up through 4%. And I don't know what the court is going to ultimately decide to do about this, but we have to start somewhere. And so my recommendation for the wage adjustment is that it be 4%. And that, by the time you include roll-ups and everything in that costs the county about $950,000. So those are some of the details of the budget that I proposed here. All of this will be posted on the website, and as we go through the workshop process, as we update it, the postings on the website will be updated. And for those that wanted to see all of this before today, I apologize. I got it done just exactly when the schedule told me to have it due, but this is what you can now get copies of. And so with that, that concludes my presentation. As you can see, budget is quite complicated and it's far-reaching, and we know that it is critical to the taxpayers as well as to the employees, but especially to those people who are our customers who we provide our services for. And when you think of the county, just think of the entire criminal justice system for all practical purposes is handled right here at this courthouse. And it comes at a cost. But they are our personnel are assets, and they provide services that you, the public, rely on and require. And so with that, I will formally submit my recommended FY 24-25 budget, and we will adjourn this presentation, this announcement.